Let's see here. Okay. I think this one kind of needs a guest opinion because I'm too biased to this one. So, let's see here. I got this, man. Come on, Daniel.
Oh. Hi, man. Yeah, I just got back from vacation.
Oh, okay. The... Oh, yeah, it looks pretty good on you. I wouldn't be able to handle it though. My head's too big for that kind of thing. Physically.
Thank you. I think it looks good too. So, what can I do for you? This hasn't got anything to do with aliens, monsters, or anything, because I don't need to deal with that at the moment. I just got back.
No. I just want you to kind of help me guest appear on my show. I've got an upcoming movie that I want a little bit of extra opinion on.
Okay. What are you reviewing?
A 1980s vampire film called The Lost Boys.
So nothing to do with Twilight?
Oh no. Perish the thought.
Alright, no problem. Let's get started. What do you get if you cross 80s power ballads, 80s fashion, 80s acting, 2 Coreys, and Kiefer Sutherland, plus vampires and humour? Well, it sounds like a mess, but in actuality, it's The Lost Boys. The 1980s. You've got wave music, the twilight years of the Cold War, the birth of the personal computer, video games.
Not to mention all the colors.
This was certainly a very important time in our history. And of course, we had many teen flick films. Now there were a few that were horror teen flicks, but few were ever successful enough to mix horror and humour. So how did The Lost Boys do so well? The Lost Boys focuses on 2 brothers, Michael, played by Jason Patric, and Sam, Corey Haim, who, with their mother, moved to the town of Santa Carla, who, judging by the mysterious disappearances and weird things going on, I think might be twinned with Sunnydale.
Horror capital of the world? I don't think so. I think a city in Mexico has already claimed that prize against us.
In typical teen flick movie mode, Michael falls in love with Star, Diane Weist.
Yes, and they both happen to meet with this freaky guy in purple pants, who I might also add makes an appearance in the second one. I have not seen the third one, so I don't know if the saxophone guy appears in that one as well, but...
Who is a member of a gang who's headed by 80s fashion disaster David, Kiefer Sutherland.
Well, let's all face it, if you really wanted to be a popular guy back then, you all wanted to look like these guys.
And so begins a weird showing, but not exactly explaining, style where this gang does weird things, and by the end of it, it turns out that Michael is turning into a vampire. It happens. Meanwhile, we have Edgar and Allan Frog. Get it? Edgar Allan Poe? One of the most famous Gothic authors of all time? So clever.
Well, let's face it, the 80s kind of hit you over the head like a freaking mallet, so... It's all in good 80s cheese fun.
Anyway, these 2 brothers, played by Corey Feldman and Jason Newlander, are self-proclaimed vampire hunters who want to kill the head vampire. Sam, meanwhile, takes things, well, slightly skeptically. Who wouldn't? Then he finds out that Michael is turning into a vampire. And his reaction is, a bit weird.
I could play some Peter Pan jokes here.
Look at me, way up high, suddenly here am I on fire. I'm flying.
But then again, there's also this reference.
Oh! Never! I knew it! I am not! So where are you? The flying nun?
And yes, this is an actual TV reference. Oh, the horrors of TV land.
Basically, the rest of the film revolves around Sam, Edgar, and Alan trying to find who the head vampire is so they can kill it, and therefore allow Star and Michael, who are only half vampires, to revert back to their full human status. There's that typical big fight at the end, some 80s blood, 80s special effects, continued 80s acting, 80s music, and of course there's the big twist about the head vampire, and then the movie just ends. Yeah, the ending wasn't the best.
Yeah, I didn't know what to think of it at first, but I just kind of figured, well, maybe it's just like some of the things just never got explained because they didn't have enough time. Again, this movie does feel like it's a little bit cramped.
Overall, this film isn't bad. It's the typical teen flick where boy meets girl who just happens to be a half vampire. It also teaches us that being in a gang is very cool, even if you're an 80s fashion disaster, and turning into a vampire is easy as drinking a little bit of blood. Yeah. Buffy did it better.
Actually, to be quite honest, according to the original Dracula story, drinking the vampire's blood is all that it takes, even for that. It just takes a prolonged period of time and, of course, a first kill. So, to be quite honest, they were actually very truthful to the Dracula story. If there's anything extra to it, that's something that only Buffy added onto it. To be quite honest, I have no problem with how they transformed him into a vampire. It's actually a very subtle and creepy kind of way of doing it.
But this film has a couple of problems with it. The main thing is that the film tries to cram in too much stuff into 90 minutes. It basically has a way of showing and explaining some things, then moving on to something completely different, and barely acknowledging what else had previously happened. I think that they really needed to also do better character developments for most of the characters. And of course the ending was slightly anticlimactic. They should have redone the ending. But overall, it's a pretty harmless film.
And I would also be remiss if I did not mention the fact that the special effects, again, some signs of people taking this and acknowledging the look and things like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, were actually really good for the 80s. I mean, some of the stuff in the lair portion in particular is very close to the same or better quality than what you would get out of your normal Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, or even Halloween for that matter. So, for a slasher fan, there's a little bit of a wait, but you definitely get paid off in dividends. If you want a vampire flick, it's still alright. And if you're one of these Twilight nut jobs, go away.
And of course it's interesting to see where these actors first started off with. So overall, it's not a bad film, but it's not exactly the best pick out of all these horror films. As I mentioned earlier, Buffy did it better. But The Lost Boys actually was the inspiration for shows like Buffy and Angel, and many other shows. Yeah, Twilight pops up again. Oh well, what can you do?
It might have inspired Twilight just a little. I would say Anne Rice inspired Twilight more than Lost Boys did, because Lost Boys still had ugly, nasty vampires that want to rip off your face. These were not nice people, not even in the most minimal sense of things. They were pretty brutal, nasty people who would pretty much rip your face off if you didn't become one of them in the first place. So, yeah, maybe tiny inspiration from the vampires looking really hot for the 80s. But beyond that, I just don't see any other connection to Twilight. Twilight's its own little beast, and it's preferably ignored by anyone who's a real vampire fan. I like Lost Boys, so...
Now, if you don't mind, my hair and I have another engagement. See ya.
Right, no problem. I'll be in touch. Signing out. Catch y'all later.